Come here. Get off.
Today we're talking to Jasmine Banks, pronouns she and her. Jasmine is a queer black feminist living her best polyamorous life in Arkansas. She's a nonprofit executive director and one half of the parenting podcast, Parenting is Political. Yes, it is. Hey, Jasmine.
Hi, Wado. How is everyone doing?
Lovely.
We are great.
Thank you for coming on.
You're most welcome. It's my pleasure.
Now it's time for us to get in your business.
I know. So, like Kenrya said, we're just going to jump straight into your junk. When do you first remember masturbating?
Oh. When I was somewhere around 6 or 8. There was a Teddy Ruxpin with a very hard plastic nose. And I would just grind the shit out of his face.
You know, our parents thought they were doing something sweet, buying us these big ass animals, stuffed animals, and you're like, no, you just bought me a boo.
Yeah. It was definitely interchangeable between Teddy Ruxpin, or I had these Care Bears that also had the hard plastic nose. They don't do stuffed animals like they did like now. My kids, they have like embroidered stuff and it's different material, but it was like a hard ass plastic nose and really firm.
Because if you get hit in the face with it, like if your cousin like swinging the legs and knock you in the face, you can lose something.
Yeah. And I remember getting into a fight and throwing those stuffed animals and hitting my grandma's glass coffee table, trying to hit my cousin Shaniqua, and it landed face forward. And so the nose like clinked on the glass, and it, she got her fly swatter. But yeah, it was like firm, a substantial stuffed animal, and I took full advantage of it.
So was that your preferred technique, or did you have a different preferred technique as a baby Jasmine?
It was like pillows, stuffed animals. That was it. Yeah.
That's a common theme, but we've been hearing.
It was like Pretty Ricky grind on me.
Well,
and Teddy Ruxpin was marketed as an educational toy, but they didn't know what kind of links this Virgo child would take that education to.
You were like, oh, we're gonna learn a whole lot.
Yes, I am nothing if not resourceful. Like I put little ABC tape in his belly, and he would like talk to me, and then I would like reduce, reuse, repurpose, recycle. Yeah. We'd learn together, and then
we learn together.
Teddy Ruxpin after dark on my futon bed.
I love it.
My mom was like, "You're so attached to him. You never wanted to get rid of him when you were younger."
Like, yeah, boo. Send her this link. Like, boop.
Here's why. So how old were you when you had your first kiss?
I was 9, and it was with my god brother. I was raised with 2 really incredible godmothers, Lee and Orlando, and they were black lesbians that lived up the street, and they had Lee had a son from a prior marriage, and that was Brandon, and we spent time together all the time, and we just wanted to see what it was like to kiss. And I remember kissing in the front room, and the parents had gone to something because back then they were like, we're just going to leave the babies. Just don't answer the door or the phone.
Yeah. All the time. And there was some uncle that was somewhere in the room, not even paying attention to us.
Oh my God, you've completely described my home, like our situation.
And he was like watching BET or like Matlock or something random. I just remember in the room, it was like one of those touch lamps that have 3 different levels. And then Lee and Orlando's room was to the left, and there was like beads on the door. And we were right by the front door. And midnight, one of those black midnight, I can't remember exactly the name, but it was one of those cone incense was just like burning.
Yes,
we kissed.
And
I really thought I was in love with Brandon. You know?
And now you look at him like, ooh. Family.
I mean, proximity will do that to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, that was my family. But you know, even though I had Black community in my school, the social setting was predominantly white, and so I was already starting to get those messages of like, that's not your real family because it's not biological.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It was like,
which I don't even know why white people even be talking like that, because they know that it'll be biological and they still be kissing their cousins and enjoying it. So,
well. We have whole like dynasties. They have whole dynasties built upon that, but you know,
in the family,
they ain't ready for that conversation. Isn't that what the young people say?
Let me know when we gonna talk about us, so y'all don't want to hear that.
Yeah, we ain't ready to talk about whatever. Okay.
But bitch, you just started the conversation. Okay. It just made me feel old.
How old were you when you had a sense of your gender identity?
So I have a very interesting story, and I don't even know if Kay knows this, because I'm not super public about it, but in the spirit of giving y'all the juicy content, I was assigned female at birth. Mm-hmm. And then about 8 or 9, I started having developmental issues. And I lived female at birth. My gender was girl. So like sex, obviously different than gender, but it does definitely inform so much about how you perform gender, about how you come into gender conversations. And so around 12, I had this period, my period started, and it didn't stop. And it didn't stop for 6 months. And I got really, really sick and anemic, and my mom had to take me to the emergency room. And so they did an x-ray on my abdomen, and they were like, something is not right here. And so they gave me some meds to stop the bleeding, and then I went into emergency surgery. And then whenever I came back from emergency surgery, they said, on your right ovary, part of it was filled with cysts, and we're going to diagnose you with polycystic ovarian syndrome. Mm-hmm. And then the other section of your right ovary was actually an internal gonad. And you have hyperandrogenism. And they told me at that time that chromosomally and hormonally, I was more male than female. But my sex designation on my birth certificate didn't change. And I continue to feel like very affirmed as a woman, and knowing that hormonally and chromosomally, I am more toward the male end of the spectrum of the sex assignments than the female. And then for part of my life, I went on hormones to increase my female presentation, like growing breasts and fighting hair and fighting different things. And then they told me I would never have children because I was making too much testosterone internally to be able to ever fertilize an egg, or like be compatible with semen. But I surprised them and have 4 of them little niggas.
Yeah, you do.
With 1 ovary.
I know.
That ovary be working hard.
God is my witness. We gonna have a baby.
Yeah. And it came as quite a surprise to me because I was not trying to get pregnant. And after I had that initial period of menstruation, I never menstruated again. Mm-hmm. Which was a part of being intersex is what it's called. And so, yeah. And the only way that I could really menstruate at that point was if I gave myself the hormones, because my testosterone level and all of my androgens are just through the roof, which makes me stronger, and I have more of a sex drive than a lot of like hormonally typical assigned female folks, and there's just lots of dynamics that play into it. It's quite interesting.
Are you still answer this if you like, or if not, shut up, bitch. We'll be fine. Are you still on meds? How does that affect now?
Yeah, so I tried to go on birth control to sort of level out some of my body dysmorphia that I experience around the follicle, like PMS, menstruation cycle. And because I have so much testosterone, whenever I went on synthetic estrogen, my body, the hormonal response was just to make even more testosterone. And then even more estrogen, and then even more progesterone, which caused me all types of issues. So my endocrinologist was like, "Please don't ever try that again. Like you're intersex, just be intersex." And the only thing that I have to do if I want to get pregnant is I have to supplement progesterone, so it lowers my testosterone levels a little bit, so that my body doesn't become like a war zone for a fetus.
Yeah. No, when I had to, right after surgery, but before I started chemo, I had to do the egg preservation steps. And baby, like, I can do chemo. I can do chemo any day. Those hormones, bitch. I remember I was in a nail salon crying and cussing a nigga out over nail polish. Like, you don't fucking understand. It was just those hormones will do something to you. So I'm glad you're able to just
and she already
live without
a Gemini,
it.
So. And what?
And she's already a Gemini. Look at her looking at me.
Shut up, bitch. You bringing up old shit. Jasmine, fix your face. I thought we were a home. I thought she was a homie.
My wife's a Gemini.
God bless you. You know how to love a complex creature.
My oldest daughter is also Gemini.
That was training.
Zara, yeah.
Ooh, I'm surrounded between Erica and my daughter. They just here. My daddy's a Gemini.
You gotta love them.
I do. They are lovable. Ding. They just got a lot going on.
You have a lot of angst in our spirits.
They just need us in their life.
That's true. I like it. So, how old were you when you first started experimenting sexually with other people?
9.
Tell us.
No. Was it 9? No. 13.
I need the story behind it because your face was just. I need to know what made that happen to your face.
Well, her name was Sarah, and she lived in Tulsa, another neighbor, and we were really good friends. Spent all summer together. I think we went to different schools, but we definitely had a lot of summer time interaction, and we were like the only kids. Well, there were only like 3 families that had children on our street. And so I would spend the night at her house. Her father had these magazines stacked up in their playroom where we would play with the Barbies. It was like right whenever Skipper's little sister came on the scene in Barbie, and you could squeeze her belly and she'd pee in the potty. Yeah. So like we got this set up. I'm very specific. I'd be like archiving my life. So I have journals detailing this. It's pretty wild. Yeah.
This is a Virgo.
Yeah. So Sarah and I are in his hunting room, which has like this little play section, and all of these magazines just like has like sports magazines, and on the tops of all of them, it's just about deer and bird hunting and fishing, and he was an outdoorsman. And at one point, we were trying to move the magazines to create like a mansion or neighborhood for our Barbies, and the magazine stack slid, and underneath it was Drew Barrymore's Playboy edition, and I was like, what is this?
Now we about to play.
So I unzipped my Care Bear onesie and shoved the magazine in there, and we like run to her room, and we looked at Drew Barrymore's butterfly tattoos and her Playboy centerfold, and that led to lots of experimentation and touching and dry humping and grinding. And Sarah was the first person that I had sexual contact with. Consensual sexual contact with, I think, is important to delineate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did Well, actually, the next question is, can you tell us about your first time having partnered sex? So I don't know if y'all actually ended up having what you would term sex, or if that would be another situation.
I mean, there was digital stimulation, there was oral stimulation, there was climax. I would call
like sex to me.
Partner sex. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were like 12, 13, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
And then we became girlfriends. I don't think we called each other girlfriends, but that's what we were. And I lived there for 2.5 years, and we had like a regular sexual relationship. And my mom would be like, "Yeah, you could have a sleepover, just no boys allowed." And I was all bet.
Perfect.
Bet.
Like,
no boys allowed.
No problem. That ain't no problem. That ain't no problem.
And when she would come over to my house for a sleepover, I had one of those attic rooms that had been turned into a room. So it had like the stairs going up, and it had an attic fan, but it was like a whole door and situation. And I was like, "Let's turn up Usher really loud, and you just lay on your back." And just like dry hump for hours.
Look, I call him our good friend. I call them our good friend dry humping, because once we started having sex, we left dry humping in the past. But dry humping can be a very useful thing.
Well, in the queer community, it's not separate than like penetrative sexual expression and practice. It's actually called tribbing. And so it's useful in the toolbox of sexuality, because not everybody's genitals are the same. And most people think of intercourse as, P and V penetration. And there's just, sex is so expansive, and sex doesn't require penetration or climax for it to be sex. And so I think if we framed it that way socially, a lot of us would be more honest about how young we were actually having sex.
Mm-hmm. So what about an orgasm? When did you first have an orgasm with a partner?
With Sarah. Yeah. Okay. Our parents were either just like negligent or super chill. I guess it depends on like...
Depending on the director of the movie.
Right. Like I it depends on if my PTSD is triggered, if I frame it as like how I frame the story. But they were like cool with me and Sarah taking showers together, and they're like, "Oh, they're just friends." I just think my mom wasn't naive, because my mom, I came out to her when I was 8. I was like, "I think I'm gay." And she's like, "Okay, girl, like, eat your food.
What's for dinner?" Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were like allowed to do all sorts of things, even though my mom had like drag queens as friends, and folks in that period of time that identified as transsexuals, and folks that were just gay men. My mom was like had a lot of really gay men who were impacted by HIV/AIDS. And so she was having conversations with me about sex and sexual identity very, very early on. And I knew about masturbation as like one of the first. She framed it as like, if you don't know how to please yourself, can't nobody else please you. So you better start practicing, Jasmine, and know what feels good to you, which is really interesting in juxtaposition with some of her other parenting practices. But suffice to say, I think she probably knew what was going on and was like laissez-faire about it. Whereas Sarah's parents were like country-ass white people who were like, they're just friends taking showers together. Anyway, so my first orgasm was in the shower with a removable shower head with Sarah. We figured out how to turn it on the high-pressure vibration mode, and I just held it at her, and it worked.
Hey.
But
I still haven't done the shower thing. We
were talking to somebody else doing This Is Your Sex Life, and she was saying that that's one of her tools, and we were both like, we never do that. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it became an issue for my mom whenever I used it as a young person, because she'd be like, other people have to use that to shower, little nasty girl. But Sarah was the first person that I realized that I could use that medium to achieve climax. But what I didn't realize is when you have that really intense experience for the first time and you're not prepared for it, your legs start shaking and you get weak, and in a slippery bathtub is probably not where you want that to happen. So I'm like standing in the back and like pushing myself back onto the tiles so that she can like do what she needs to do with the shower head, and I climax and my legs fall out from under me and I just like strike me and Sarah in the shower. But you know, I don't think any of us have unclumsy sexual experiences, no matter what age.
None of us.
Makes it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
when you're older, it makes it a little more dangerous because you can. Those body parts aren't as rubbery as they were when you were younger.
That's so funny. Yes, that's true. That's very true.
So, what 3 words would you use to describe sex in your teens?
It was confusing. It was painful. Gosh, I feel like I'm such a buzzkill now in this part of the interview.
No.
And it was about like safety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you want to expound on any of that, or do you want to move on to your 20s?
Sure. So around the time that I moved away from that neighborhood with Sarah, I moved into a community called the Colony, which is for single mothers who are widowed or divorced who have been homeless because my mom had like gone through multiple domestic violence situations, and we'd lived in domestic violence shelters. And so anyway, we landed in this place that was my most stable home, and it was very much influenced and proselytized by the churches that were in that area. And so as a part of going to school in a white majority junior high and high school, and being a part of this community that was preyed upon of like, oh, you're a widow and you're a single mom and you should come to this event, I started going to youth group. And so I went from having like this like really fringe, radical, Black, queer, Native experience as a young person into this very white, cisgender, heterosexual, Christian, patriarchal frame. And there was a lot of social motivation for me to not identify as Black, but to identify as mixed, for me to ask Jesus to be my Lord and Savior, and like get rid of all of the sinful things that, obviously because she was a single mother, my mom had thrust upon me. So I went through a period of like really rejecting all the things that my mom taught me around like sex and positivity in the best way that she could, because she felt like she wasn't empowered, and adopted a lot of the True Love Waits movement, which was Joshua Harris and a part of like the white evangelical church. And so there's like purity balls, and there's like throwing away your secular music, and don't be a sexual temptress. And then that really required me pressing down my identity as a queer person. And at that point, I identified as a bi person. And so I confessed those evil sins to my youth pastor and all of my other like, student leaders, and I made a commitment to be celibate, and I threw away any kind of idea around non-monogamy, and I was on the straight and narrow. And during a religious trip to the Cherokee Nation's family camp revival that was happening in my senior year, I met a white man who was part of a worship group, who was like had come to the Cherokee Nation to do like a mission trip over spring break. And he ended up being, and that was when I was 18, and he ended up being my, the first person I married. And yeah, and so I spent the last part of my teenage years with him. And the safety layer of that is that when you're told, like my mom is an unenrolled Cherokee, which means that she's not actually allowed to claim Cherokee citizenship, even though her father's mother is on the Dawes rolls. We're currently in the process of applying for citizenship so people can stop telling me that I'm not Cherokee, because I can't handle it. And so when you're not Black enough, you're not Cherokee enough, you're not straight enough, you're not queer enough, you're the single mom, you're homeless, really you look for safety. And anti-blackness in the form of like cis het patriarchal society, particularly of the Christian persuasion, the white Christian persuasion, offers a lot of faux safety. But what you trade for your safety is compliance and shedding your identity. And so I did that in my teen years, my junior high and teen years, in order to feel some sort of like stability and normalcy. The short version of the end of that story is it didn't fucking work.
Okay, yeah. Good. So what 3 words did you use to describe sex in your 20s?
Sex in my early 20s was unfulfilling, was about power, and was just about like reproduction and getting my babies.
Right. You want to dive into any of that?
Yeah. So by the time I was 20, I had married this white man from an upper class family and a very Southern Baptist background. And I was trying my best, despite all of my feminist and like Black feminist and like radical ideology and proclivities, to be the good Christian wife. And we were in ministry together, in church ministry around worship, and then I did children's ministry. And so I didn't really have a very fulfilling sexual life because he was not able to come to a space with partnered sex that was liberatory and open because of how his Southern Baptist upbringing had really caused so much damage around sexual identity. And then on top of that, I didn't know that he was an abuser and that it was like an underground situation. And so sex then just became about like, how do I negotiate power with him? How do I have children? Because I know I want to have children if I'm going to have children, because I'd already had one by accident, which was Zara. And then I knew I wanted her to have siblings, but the writing was clearly on the wall that we were not going to be together. And I hadn't yet discovered that he was a pathological sexual predator. And so, yeah, it was just more about like, let's just figure out how to survive in this marriage and get my needs met. By the time Zara was born, I was still in undergrad, and he had tried to pressure me to not keep the baby, or if I kept the baby, to drop out of school. And I just knew sort of intuitively that I needed to push through school. And I was like, no, you drop out and I will stay. And then I had a lot of non-sexual, deeply intimate same-sex relationships through my 20s, where there was like cuddling and erotic connection, but there was never intercourse. And so I didn't feel sexually deprived, but I was coming to terms with the fact that I either need to have an open marriage, or I need to admit that I'm more queer than what I can stand. And also I'm just not a good Christian wife. But by the time I was 25, 25 was the first time I discovered that he was a sexual predator and had been assaulting women and hiding it from me. And he went to like sex rehab. So then sex just became like, what the fuck? It was good that my mom taught me to masturbate, because I did a lot of that and a lot of non-partnered sex. Am I so bumming y'all out?
No,
not at all. I was just thinking like, damn, this is interesting as hell. And the fact that, I mean, I hate that like super positivity where it's like, man, you've been through so much and you're still so positive. I hate that. But at the same time, you understand where, like, that's a simple way of like summing up how I'm feeling right now. Like, God damn, you have like, these experiences have made you into just a interesting little layered person that I am like, how much time we got here? Because I want to go back to, it's amazing how all these experiences have just kind of built up to make you who you are. And I think it's dope as fuck. So
yeah. So the end of my 20s was, as far as like relationally, I was working on confronting my children who I found out were sexual assault survivors by the hands of their biological father, and like fighting for their right and navigating my own, when you're in intimate violent situations, sex is also a component of how the abuser brings you back and controls you or creates shame narratives. So I was working through all of that, but by the time the end of my mid-20s rolled around, I was able to have a community to really help me emancipate myself from that chaos. And then I was able to start doing sexuality on my terms that was absent of the constraints of like a predatory, abusive connection. And so the end of my 20s was a really, really fun time. Of catching up on all the things my true love waits period of life had kept me from experiencing.
I just think about the ways that sex was used as a weapon within my marriage all the time, and how overwhelming that is, and how it contributes to my PTSD, and how it stands in the way of, it doesn't have to, but it threatens to jump in the way of having healthy relationships after the fact, and all that it takes to do that. And like loving the fact that you've been able to do that and create a life with Mo and y'all's kids. And it's just,
yeah, Mo and my other partners who have done a tremendous amount of like dharma and labor around helping me transform. And there was like a pretty good year where when Mo and I would have intercourse, particularly penetrative intercourse, where if I climaxed, I would spend the next hour in a ball having a panic attack. And and so it really required having a gentle partner who could hold me and not personalize whenever I had that dissociative experience around sex and body. And we don't often talk about the ways in which those of us who have survived childhood sexual assault become enmeshed or entangled with folks who are predatory with their sexual choices and behaviors, because they target us, not because we find them, but because they target us. And then that dynamic plays out, which is a part of that intergenerational work we have to do around our sex and our sexual identities and expression. But yeah. And I think that oftentimes when we're talking about like the salacious, juicy parts of sex, that we like to cut away how trauma has played a part of that, or how struggle has played a part of that, because we've been socialized to want these like very linear narratives and themes, like, oh yeah, like all of my sex is like really bomb. And people are like, you have BDSM, like you're BDSM, you're a kink practitioner, that must be so like, people get excited about it and it's arousing. And then I say things like, yes, and actually I am a kink practitioner because it has been a vehicle for healing the sexual assault and trauma. And they're like, oh man, you ruined it. Like, ooh, it's not so sexy anymore.
but this fucking life.
But it is like like what is more sexy than consent practices and negotiation of desire and openness that helps to heal wounded places in us and helps us access who we have been all along, that violence and trauma kept us from being able to live in that truth. That's sexy as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all both said,
Yeah. No, I feel like doing this show I've always been a sexual person. Someone told me, like, you're the type of person that just kind of gives that off. And for that reason, I've always been a sexual person. I give it off, I receive it, all of that. But doing this show has like taken it to another level. It has combined my love for fucking and a good orgasm and pleasure with also just recognizing how it is freedom and a path to liberation. And so the more I hear from people like you and the more I learn, I am just like taking it all in, because it's amazing that, everyone says like, do what you love, you never have to work a day, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's bullshit, but okay.
Yeah, but I feel like I am finally at a point where it's like all of these things that I enjoy are coming together, and I not only do I enjoy it, but I see its purpose in the world. And that gets me so fucking horny.
I mean, if sex is about a joy and pleasure practice in some of its layers, then it makes so much sense that this is working for you and that this is hitting at like a core part of who you are, that is deeply linked with feelings of liberation. Because those of us whose histories emerged from enslavement and settler domination have not had the freedoms to. Mm-hmm. And so, hoe culture, you being ratchet with your sexuality in the face of, stereotypes like the Jezebel and Sapphire and the Mammy that's powerful work, and it's political work. And so I definitely appreciate where this sits for you in the constellation of your life. As a polyamorous person, I feel in the same way that a person who has just really guided me in my critical polyamory, which is Dr. Kim Tallbear. She talks about in a podcast she recently did around how sex really needs to be taken off of the shelf. Like, it needs to stop being commodified. It's not like some special ornate thing. What makes it special is the meaning we make of it in the moment. But as far as like a global frame, like it's non-unique. It's no different than like me choosing to cuddle with someone as intimacy, because I can fuck someone and not feel intimate connection with them, not feel anything. It can be exchange or extraction, or an extractive relationship. And the church has done a really good job in particular of attaching so much meaning around like morality and ethics to sex and what we do to our body. And that was just another vehicle for like controlling and criminalizing the Black body. That when we choose to be like, I have a platonic friend that sometimes I let eat me out, and like we're still platonic friends, and like we high five and just kick it. Like, that is a powerful thing in the face of a nation that says, in order to be a good citizen, you have to not have sexual intercourse so that you keep everyone healthy, and you only have one partner, and you track your children, and they're registered with the state, and you have a picket fence, right? And we know that Black and Indigenous folks have never fit in that lens, and it's intentional. Because that is a social construct that will always keep us as other. Because our ancestors and our practices call us to a deeper, more abundant, more generous version of family and sex and expression.
Yes, bitch.
Yes. Bitch, I'm coming over for conversation and cornbread when the world open back up.
My poor kids are gonna be like, my mom was a Black feminist, and like she would show her friends her vulva, and it was like normal.
I always wonder what our kids will remember about, like there are certain things about growing up that I remember, and I'm convinced that my son is gonna remember this as the summer of me sitting on the porch, drinking, eating chicken, and talking about my body parts. That's what you did. I literally sat on my porch and ordered chicken like every 3 days and talked about sex. So,
That's a beautiful thing.
I know.
Yeah.
We're raising great people.
I think they're gonna be great. I think as long as it's normalized, as like, I'm sorry that your like little white friends have parents that never have sex, but we fuck. And not only do we fuck, but it'll be in the middle of their Saturday and be like, watch the baby and lock the door. We're gonna go have sex. And yes, you're probably gonna hear us. I actually just started this other practice when they're like, we don't want to hear about that all the time, because they're embarrassed of us and the social norms of their peer groups. So we've been like, we're gonna go have a Bible study.
Your kids are going to be invited to an actual Bible study, and they're going to freak the fuck out.
They're going to be like, this is not what it sounds like. Who are we calling daddy during this Bible study? Like, when do we say yes, daddy? And then the Christians are going to be like, do you mean Father God? And Addison's going to be like, I don't think so.
I mean, I heard God say it, but I don't know if that's what they were talking about.
They're gonna be so fucked up around religion. I'm like, I was just being slain in the spirit, okay? And then Zara's gonna be like, but what did that have to do with your butt?
And there'll be no answers.
Yeah, I actually just got one of our kiddos. They asked if we talk about masturbation very openly, and one of the kiddos was like, I would like some lube and a vibrator. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, like, dope. I can get you one that's appropriate for your anatomy and for your age. And then they came back 2 weeks later and were like, I need new batteries. And I was like, what the?
Let's leave it with it under the pillow. Wait, I do.
You do
Let me
that.
shut up.
like the tooth fairy will give you new batteries for your vibrator and the.
But I think it's so important. I buy vibrators as graduation gifts for young girls now because, well, I've only had an opportunity to buy it for young girls. But let's learn how to pleasure yourself. And this is just a thing that we do. And it doesn't have to be weird or gross or nasty or...
Yeah,
unless we want it to be.
Unless we want
to be.
The other day, the same kid had a really fantastic school trip and said, hey, and we talk about consent and all kinds of different, like how we negotiate space because we're a close-knit family and we also know that privacy is important in how you practice masturbation. So they announced, I'm gonna be in the bedroom for an hour and it's gonna be locked because I'm gonna masturbate. Comes back out and I inquired and I said, hey, it seemed like that was like urgent. Like you just like made this declaration. What was going on? And the kiddo was like, I had a really good day and I just wanted to feel even better.
Yes.
And I was like, I am done. I write papers on me. I am in the critical canon of teaching your child sexuality.
I love it.
Well,
so did like a ribbon and a star drop from the sky and like get pinned to your shirt?
Beyonce came down and said, I am so proud of you.
Good. I love it.
She said,
good. Your Virgo sister.
I love you like you from Houston.
It was actually really good. Yeah.
But the reality is, and I wonder if you know how much you do influence other parents. Like, I know for me, the first time that I had a conversation with my daughter about gender identity was off of something that you wrote online about how we need to talk to our kids about it. Like, I think, I've been having conversations with her about consent since she was very young in all of the ways, right? Not just framing it around sex, but when we go to the doctor's office, she has to give consent for them to be able to look at her body. For white people touching her hair, she has to give consent on whether or not she wants, because that was a whole thing.
But she doesn't have to ask if she stabs them. Like, if she pulls out her shank.
No, she does not. She can do whatever the fuck she wants.
They touch her hair, stab it.
Shame. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we hadn't had any conversations about that. So we did, and I asked her, who do you feel like? And she was like, well, what do you mean? We had conversations. She's like, oh, okay, yeah, no. She's like, I'm a girl. I was like, okay, cool. I just wanted to check to make sure that I am living right and making sure that I'm taking care of you and providing the safety and the support that you need. And so, I hope that you know that as you share your life with your kids and the way that you are open about sexuality and gender and sex with them, that other folks, and in your podcast, that other folks are absorbing that and learning from that.
Yes. So we get messages all the time from Parenting is Political podcast listeners about like, you're telling me to teach my child this, and I didn't even know it about myself. And so we're doing this sort of like multi-generational transformation work. And I don't mean to say that like we're intentionally, like it's planned and it's targeted, but I think that for me, when it came to, a lot of folks make meaning of what I share online and how I live my life so openly, and they frame it as though I'm attention seeking or I'm always looking for drama or like I'm trying to be some online celebrity. But I had to come to this place of reckoning around the accesses that the access points in my life, the intersections in my life. And I'm light skinned. By I don't know what grace, I was the first generation person to graduate from junior high or high school. Like neither of my parents are have secondary or post-secondary education. I just had all these opportunities, and I'm sure a level of that is definitely colorism, and a level of that is also definitely having proximity to white family members. But when I thought about who I wanted to be in my life work around Black liberation, I knew that I had to make the choice to not be underground, because those privileges that I had and the way that colorism is so fucked up, I could speak to audiences and hold and honor Blackness and still like tell my story, where some of my like dark skinned siblings can't do that. Right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so I chose to be really intentional and measured. I'm not, as much as I appear to be, I don't just go on the internet and like vomit everywhere, and just be haphazard about things. I am often very strategic about what I do and what I don't share and how I share it. But sharing and telling your story has been the only way that I have healed and transformed and found deeper joy and deeper liberations, because someone else told their story. And every time I look around, I don't see people telling my story. And I believe that Audre Lorde taught us that, right? Like if you don't see yourself in books that have been written, you have to write one. And so I look at my social media engagement and the stories that I tell in person and through digital mediums in that way. And I have written a book, but it's not published, but it's written. But yeah, like, I hope that someone, and I was interviewing George Johnson from All Boys Aren't Blue, and they were saying the same thing. Like, they were saying, I never saw a story like this about myself, so I wrote it. And George also has the same kind of social media that I have, where they're really reflective and they really share these things that most people would hold with shame. And I don't like Eminem for various reasons, but I love his like rap tactics that like he starts like playing the dozens on himself before whoever's in the rap battle can, right? He's like, yeah, I'm white. Yeah, I'm from the trailer. Yeah, I can't fuck. Yeah, I'm skinny. Right? And I think there's some power in that. In like like, what is it called when you take someone's gun away from them, right? Like, yeah. When you take their ammo away from them, ammunition, and then you take back power by naming those things about you. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been a defense strategy, it's been an offensive strategy, and it's been a strategy that I hope invites deeper community and conversation. I'm not trying to say I'm right, because I've grown so much. Like, I'm not the most expert on whatever critical analysis of X, Y, and Z, but I do practice every single day to be less wrong about the things that I think.
Mm-hmm. That's all you can fucking ask for, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And I'm a good lay.
Hey.
Another gold star.
Which leads me to ask you, what 3 words describe sex in your 30s?
Sex in my 30s. Why did I just do a Meg Stallion? Like, sex in my 30s is a high person. It has been juicy and restorative. Man, you said 3 words? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and playful.
Yes. Okay,
fantastic.
Because that sounds amazing.
And I was about to say lit, L-I-T. Lit.
Yes.
That's what it says.
It has been lit. So I married to Mo. It is a love marriage, but it also was a tactical marriage because we live in Arkansas and Mo is non-binary and queer and I'm queer, and we need some like state protections in order to function in this community. Mm-hmm. Especially because our daughter is trans, and so it makes it even more complicated. And so Mo has been such a fun partner to experience a second adolescence with. So queer people often don't have the room in our younger years, psychosocial development years, to really unpack and experiment and play. There's so much social pressure about like staying closeted or having shame or all kinds of variables. And I would say it's same for Black folks, even Black folks who aren't queer. It's like not safe for us often to experiment and go through those developmental milestones that our white, young people do at their little keg parties and whatever. And so I've been experiencing second adolescence with Mo, and that's been really, really fun. And then we transitioned into this more like secure love secure sex practice that's less about experimentation and more about like us developing our own deep identity, we'd be like, oh, okay, so what was something that we tried that wasn't so in kink there are folks who like to induce vomiting by like deep throating, like extreme deep throating to the point where it induces vomiting. So that was one of the first things that we experimented with around kink, because like gagging was sexy for me. And we learned very quickly that like gagging is nice. When things come up after the gagging, that's a no-go. That's like
that was your line.
And I'm not kink shaming, but that's like something that we experimented with throwing away. And now we're just practicing holding each other in a really incredible way in our like sex play. And then with my other partners, it's just been like so good. I have 2 other women partners that I like, most non-binary, but I have 2 other Black women partners that I have sexual experiences with. And then I just broke up with my girlfriend because she was garbage. But we did have a really good sex life. But she just needs to get her life together. She's probably listening to this. Get your life together, Megan.
Oh, shit. Pow, pow.
So it's great because with each of my partners, I'm not expected to take on any kind of like heteronormative role. Right? People usually assume because I'm more femme presenting that I'm like the bottom or the person who gets penetrated in my relationship with Mo. But no, I'm daddy in that relationship. And then I have another sexual relationship where we're both femmes, we're both high femmes, and it's just like a completely different level. I have another sexual relationship where it's just all erotica and it's all text, and like I love writing and words and reading, and I just really, really love that medium. And so to have someone that I can have like sexting with and then like masturbate or not has also been really incredible. So it's just very fun. COVID threw a wrench in lots of plans, but I'm learning that like during a part of my life, I did some sex work and I did some cam work as a part of that sex work. And I was like, oh, I have these skills. They're coming back. Okay.
It's like riding a bike.
You ain't going to keep me down, COVID. So that has been really fun. And then also with COVID, like distance play toys that have Bluetooth or like function over, those have also been very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell us about a sexual experience that you remember fondly.
I have, because of how I am a dom top in my BDSM life, I really, really, really appreciate bottoms and subs that need extra care, aftercare. And so I had an experience with a person who was bottoming for me who had never really like felt safe to have a climax because she was a squirter. And so part of the care that I was able to provide for her was around like cleanup for her and aftercare. And like I bought a special mat and tool that helps to protect the bed but doesn't make it feel like, oh, like you're a medical case and this is weird, right? Like it was like seamless as far as like the environment and the scene went. And she got to like climax and she ejaculated, and then like we got to do this care work afterwards that was like really fulfilling for me. So when I show up in BDSM space and get to do aftercare, it gives me like this really lovely sexual high around like nurturing and aftercare. So if you're not familiar with BDSM, that might seem like a little weird and confusing, but you know.
No.
You know what? Actually, that's one of the things about that's one of the things about BDSM that I find beautiful is the intentionality of the aftercare part. So if you're not familiar with it, then you probably should be getting a little more familiar with it. So you're not just leaving your partner on the bed underneath the sheet alone, you know?
Yeah, because subspace can be definitely hard, that rebound. It was with a different person, but another really fun one that I got to do was someone who really, really like to be shocked. And I didn't realize how much I like to shock people, but I do.
Hey, learning new shit every day.
Exactly.
My rising is Scorpio, so that's what I thought must have been channeling.
That makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
Like the sting and the pain. Yeah.
So you gave us we have a pretty good idea of what your sex life looks like now. But on average, how many times do you have some sort of sexual contact in a week?
Gosh, I talked to you about this for another piece that you did. It's had an uptick recently. Before, whenever I was traveling and I could see my people in New York, like my play partners, then that was like multiple times a day. Now, though, because of COVID, it's probably like 4 or 5 times a week. Unless I have someone that comes to visit or like we do a video chat, then it's more. Mm-hmm. Then it's like a weirdly large number out of the typical norm because it's multiple partners.
Mm-hmm. Are there kind of, I guess along those lines, like certain times of day that you prefer to have sex? Like, I like to have sex in the morning.
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah.
And I was confused.
Why are you confused?
Because I'm not a morning person. I'm not a morning person. But I did have a sexual partner recently that made me motivated enough to wake up a couple of, days out of the week to have morning sex with her. Today, Mo texted me in between a meeting and was like, hey, do you have time to have sex? And that was really nice and fun. Mm-hmm. I like midday sex. At this point with home, schooling with COVID and working from home and the white supremacist in chief and everything else, like the race war that we all need to grab our machetes for very soon. I get tired at night. So now my sex life has shifted to the daytime. Mm-hmm. And if we don't get it in on the weekday, it's like our kids don't see us for a couple of hours on the weekends.
Gotta make up time.
Yeah.
That's why I like morning sex, because I'm always really fucking tired by the end of the day. Mm-hmm. But also morning is not early for me.
Okay, well, you're making
it's just the first thing in your day sex.
Exactly. Which could be like 10, because it could, on the weekends it's like 10 or 11 o'clock, especially if my daughter is at her dad's.
You get to sleep in until 11 o'clock?
If she's not home. Man, which is only twice a month. for 48 hours, but I take advantage of it.
I'll trade that for a couple of my sex sessions. Let me sleep until 10, somebody.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, I take it. And then if I can roll over and have sex, it don't get too much better than that.
See, I just logistically, what about your breath?
We just don't breathe in each other's faces. I mean, shit, it's a lot of ways you can have sex that don't involve on your nose. We're considerate, but I don't care. I want to.
Also, bodies have smells, and it's whatever. You don't need to be like, so fresh and so clean. Bodies just
Listen, I wake up juicy. I like to
now a marinated puss is
a good puss.
A good puss. It's like baked over. It's been baking overnight, like a warm baked potato.
I still sleep with my hands between my thighs, and so like if I sleep with. I've done it since I was a child, and so if I lubricate at all and I wake up, I just rub it on Mo's face.
They're like, hey, good morning.
And then because we're that like crunchy queer couple, Mo will be like, it smells like you're about to ovulate. I'm like, shut the fuck up. That's not what you say.
I love it. I love it.
As do I. All right, let's see. How long do your sex sessions typically last?
Oh man, if it's a scene, it can be a couple of hours. If it's just like typical vanilla sex, that's usually shorter. That's an hour or less.
Okay. Where do you usually do it?
Our scenes are usually in our room. If the kids are gone, it's like fair play game. I broke the car window because there was sex happening, and I broke the windshield with my foot because I was pressing on it hard.
I'm sorry.
So when you break do you just commit at this point and just keep going, or did you like?
I mean, there ain't shit you can do about it right then, right?
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
What's been done has been done.
Yeah, you didn't get hurt.
It didn't shatter. It just spidered it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I gotta replace my wife's window.
I mean, but you had sex.
Yeah.
Somebody was making it rain. A good hailstorm. Yeah. What's the best part of your sex life right now?
The best part of my sex life is, harkens back to my history that doesn't feel coercive. It feels like very held and free. And just like, I really love that the partner that I have most immediate access to really likes eating my ass. Like, that's so nice. I really love that. Mm-hmm. And then also because sex is about like reciprocity and this space, like this third space you create between you. I really like that because Mo is a non-binary person who's doing a lot of work for themselves around body and sexuality, coming also from Christianity, that I get to be a safe space for practice around like experimenting how gender expression and identity intersect with sexual expression and identity. That has been really, really fun. And I love having a non-binary partner because it never feels like I'm with a set gender or like a gender at all. It's just like, this is Mo's version of non-binary and we get to make of it what we want. And so if Mo's like, hey, can I get a dildo that squirts and can I come on your face? I'm like, yes.
Absolutely.
Let's do that.
Let's explore.
And so it's great. I imagine I hope it's like what the future of sex is for so many of us, that even those who are not queer or those who are not trans can figure out blueprints for play and, like erogenous experience. It's not just about all that boring stuff you see on Pornhub.
Yes. What's the most frustrating part?
That I can't travel because I have people I need to fuck.
Fuck you, COVID.
Yeah. Like it gets to the point where I want to protect the herd, and then also I need to go to Alabama to see somebody. So I'm trying to be I'm really, really trying to be a good relative and not travel and like go places.
But this junk has needs.
Well, 8 months is a long time to be away from a partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
How often do you masturbate?
Every day.
Every day. And what's your favorite technique? Do you have one?
I'm a friction kind of person, and it's always my hand. I have all kinds of toys and tools. Whenever I was like active as a Just Jasmine blogger, which is still, my blog still exists, I would get all kinds of different like free products. And then I just love sex shops and I collect things, but I just have never found anything that I enjoy as much as my hands. Also, it might be just about logistics because I always masturbate first thing when I wake up, no matter what. And I don't want to get up and walk to my closet and open a bin and figure out what I want. So maybe it's also that I'm lazy. It's the Taurus in me. It's my Taurus moon.
Oh, yeah. I was married to a Taurus. That's the whole thing. Why every day? What does that do for you to start your day in that way?
Honestly, it might be for like everyone else because I'm nicer. I, less murderous. I feel energized. I'm like ready to get up and do things afterwards. It's like activating.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a power up button.
Yeah.
Do you ever have any trouble turning off the day and focusing on bodily pleasure?
Totally. As a person who's survived childhood and adult sexual assault, dissociation is like a huge part of how I balance things, and especially dissociating from anything that's about being in my body. And so I've had to create practices and norms where I invite myself to be inside my body, and masturbation has been one of those ways. And then lingerie and anything that's like experiential and tactile that I can put on my body also is sort of like a meditative practice that calls me into space with myself. So it's complicated. And so even if I don't have a busy day, that is definitely an edge, like a learning edge that I have.
If you could snap your fingers and change one thing, what would you change about your sex life?
I would be able to get people pregnant.
Babies for everyone.
I just wanna, wow, that's an interesting question. I don't know if I would really change anything. No, I would. Okay, so I would change how complicated it is to be like a relationship anarchist, like a person who's poly in my sexual expression in life, because it often feels like that heterosexual, like vanilla couples just get like such an easy script to follow, and they don't have to like have these 4,000 fucking conversations with people in order to like get some head.
But here's the thing. Part of the problem is that's what be fucking us up.
That's true.
Not even us. That's what be fucking, that's what fucks it up. I think what makes it outside looking in. But I know it's like a, fuck, I got it.
Sometimes I get a little tired. I'm like, is there like a hand signal where I can just be like, please? like, I mean, I know we have sign language for it, but like just like a single hand gesture, like let's do anal, but I don't want to be like partners, and I'm not trying to like steal your like I'm not trying to do anything nefarious. I just think you might be fun to like do anal with.
That would be okay. We gotta.
Are you making up a?
I'm doing my Walter Machado.
No, this is the anyway.
Oh.
We have to have video for next season. Yeah.
You gotta start using video.
Yeah. We're ridiculous. So are y'all gonna come to Parenting is Political to talk about how like sex and parenting?
Yes, if you'll have us.
Yeah.
We'd love to come on.
Cool.
Before we do that, can you tell us what is a sex best practice that you want to share with our listeners?
I have so many.
Give us what you want.
Oh my gosh. This is such this feels like my Miss America question. All right. So I would say a best practice that I commit to is understanding that sex is about an experience, not a performance. And in so many ways, you don't have, like, it doesn't have to be, did I do this good? Did I do this bad? Did you climax? Did you not? And embracing these binaries, but like checking in with people, like, did you feel listened to? Did you experience pleasure that you could recognize? Did you feel as though you could communicate to me? Did you have fun? Those things, like normalizing those questions doesn't make it any less sexy. And it actually opens up opportunities of like deeper sex play and engagement, because then folks feel safe and seen to like give more details about what they want. It becomes even more juicy at that point. And I have had partners in the past who, when we tried those practices, were like, I just feel like we're like doing like an exit survey, and I don't like that. And it just feels like you're grading me or I'm grading you, and we shouldn't do that. And so normalizing open communication is just really, really critical, because it's that safety in communication that allows us to negotiate boundaries and consents and desire. And those are all foundational to having an enjoyable sexual experience.
Mm. Do you have any must-use tools?
Uberlube.
Mm.
Is one of my favorite. And I think that folks who, this is what I'm going to say. Cis women who are not queer definitely need to try an internal dildo. It's a dildo that has sort of like a hook or a bulb that you insert into your vaginal canal, and it can vibrate or it can't vibrate. But like, I want cis het women masturbating by putting the internal dildo in, putting a shit ton of lube and like rubbing the dong while like clitorally stimulating, and like get into it. I think that is a must-have experience. Like, you know, we first introduced that tool to be supportive of some of the habits of like Mohs dysphoria, or some of the ways that Mohs dysphoria was showing up. But at one point I was like, why is this just for like a non-binary person who needs to like see themselves like gender expansive? I'm going to try this shit. And I masturbated with it, and I was like, next level, next level, next level. Yeah. Like if you are if you have the anatomy, like, it's language is just so problematic. But say I'm talking to Erica and I'm assuming you have a vulva and I'm assuming you like to stroke dick. Why not stroke your own while playing with your
girl?
clitoris?
I'm online right now, like about to buy my own. Like, bitch, I'm literally looking online right now to. And then
the bulb, which is used to secure the person who's wearing the internal dildo, acts as a mechanism for you to feel full, and then it vibrates to also hit your G-spot. And I'm like,
yeah, we may need you to send us the link when we finish.
I'm looking, and you will approve before I press in. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Would you rather give up partner sex or masturbation?
Partner sex. Hands down.
Oh, yes.
That's easy.
I'm lazy, but yeah, I like it. Yeah.
You're like, you mean they get to do the work?
Yeah.
I'll stick with partnered sex.
Exactly.
What do you hope that people learn from this walk through your sex life?
I just hope that folks can take away that even those of us who have our bodies and our sexualities and our sexual experiences as sites of extreme trauma and suffering, and even shame, that we don't have to throw away sexuality and sexual experience, and that in community and through sort of like embodied healing, we can transform and have different memories and different ways of being in relationship with our bodies and others, and the intersections of sexuality and sexual practice. I really hope that comes through. And I also hope that it comes through that like you can be a dope ass parent and caretaker and like really like to fuck and really like kink and really do all sorts of expansive things around sex.
Yeah. I think they're going to get that.
Mm-hmm. I hope so.
Yeah, well done. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I hope you're not jealous that Erica's my new best friend.
So here's the thing.
So here's the problem. You say that, but then there's a lot of responsibility that comes with this. And so, yeah, you're going to be like, damn. I mean, yeah. So is this the one I need to be buying?
Those shots she was getting, I was the one giving her them shits.
Yes, that's a great starter. And you see the ridges, it also can rub your, like, get clitoral contact.
Yeah, they had... They have another one that has like the little bunny, but I feel like I'd probably like freak out with all that stimulation.
Yeah, that one that has the ridges is nice because it's got an angle that you can like bend the shaft part a little bit away and get your hand down enough to give yourself the physical contact around clitoral stimulation. So,
ding ding.
Okay, send it to me.
Thanks, bestie. Sorry, Kenrya.
It's fine. Where can other people who want to be your bestie find you online?
Well, applications for best friends are closed. I peaked at Erica. So, Parenting is Political on Instagram is the best place to connect.
And then the website is parentingispolitical.org.
That is correct. And we have all of our podcasts there and email and newsletter, and people can subscribe and all that jazz. But people think that just because I be really personal that I want them to follow me on my personal social media, like my Jasmine Instagram. And every once in a while I get the streak of like Virgo. I feel bad because I'm not being nice to people, so I'll let them in. And then 3 weeks later, my list is cut down again.
Who the fuck is this? Like, who is this person? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So y'all head over to the Parenting is Political accounts and follow her there. And that's it for this week's episode of The Turn On. Thank y'all so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Peace out. This episode was produced by us, Erica and Kenrya, and edited by Ballistic. The theme music is from Brazy. Now you can support The Turn On and get off. Subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Then drop us a 5-star review and you'll be entered to win something that's turning us on. Post your review and email a screenshot to us at theturnonpodcast@gmail.com to enter. Our Patreon page is also live. Become a supporter today and access lots of goodies, including 2-for-1 raffle entries. Don't forget to send us your book recommendations and sex and related questions. And follow us on Twitter at The Turn On Pod and Instagram at The Turn On Podcast. You can find links to books, merch, transcripts, guest info, and other fun stuff at theturnonpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon. Holla!